Hello, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the National Parents Union presents Speak Your Truth with yours truly, Vivette Dukes. Good evening. It's a pleasure to have all of you here, as it is a pleasure every time we're able to gather together in this forum. I'd like to begin tonight, first and foremost, by letting you know that this past week we did not have broadcasts, and we will be in the future as we enter into 2021, reimagining and re envisioning how we move forward with Speak Your Truth in the National Parents Union, solely because of the needs that my students have as a teacher, are in need of from me in that role. And that is my primary focus, and very much in alignment with the polls and the different surveys that the National Parents Union has gone to great lengths to do to listen to the voices of parents. And resoundingly, parents are saying that they need more support from the educators in their children's lives. And as one such educator who takes my role very seriously, it is my honor to be a teacher. That will factor in. So I just want you all to know that, and to apologize to our regular viewers who are here every week. You may have been saying, "What happened? We didn't see you, Vivette." No worries. I'm here just really focusing on our youth. We've never been educated in a pandemic. I've never been an educator in a pandemic, and it is quite different than any experience I've ever had at all. And so it requires a different level of excellence from me, and a different level of support from me, and to avail myself at a greater need than I previously did. And so as not to spread myself too thin, to have a measure of self-care that I need to be there for my family as well, we'll be making some changes. I just wanted to start off the night with that. Now, as we continue, our main purpose of being here tonight, and I'm glad that you've tuned in. If you know of others who need to be a part of this broadcast, let them know. Send out the text, share this across all platforms, because tonight our topic is one that deals with environmental injustice and the direct correlation between environmental injustice and the Black Lives Matter movement. You heard me right. The Black Lives Matter movement. That didn't go away. You might not be hearing it as much on the media, but never look to the media to tell you everything that is going on. That just because it was a flash in the pan in the media's eyes does not mean that anything has gone away or that anything has been resolved. If anything, the movement that we've seen in the Black Lives Matter is that there are so many layers to the ways in which Black lives are assaulted on any given day over the course of history. This is true. And tonight I'm honored to have two wonderful activists with me, women I call sisters, women who are also my neighbors, and we share this common cause of the landfill on Long Island. Yeah, when you think of Long Island, you don't think of a landfill, do you? Vivette, what are you talking about? When you think of Long Island, you think of the Hamptons. When you think of Long Island, you think of the wonderful scenery and the beaches, correct? But there's a lot more to be said about Long Island. I've put some things in the chat already. I invite all of you to share and make this a very robust conversation tonight, because whether you live on Long Island or not, this is, and it will affect you indirectly if it is not affecting you directly. There are no longer 6 degrees of separation. It's more like 1 degree of separation. And if you think that we are not impacted by the things that affect our brothers and sisters across states, across this nation, you are sadly mistaken. I think if nothing else, the pandemic has taught us that. The actions of something that happens on the other part of the globe can affect us. Eventually, it will. And this is yet another such case. I'd like to begin by formally introducing our guests. I know them well. However, I want to introduce them properly. Monique Fitzgerald is a founding member of the Brookhaven Landfill and Action Group, which I am a proud member also. She is a lifelong resident of North Belport and an organizer and activist fighting to ensure that Black Lives Matter throughout Long Island and beyond. Our second guest tonight is Dr. Abena Asare. She's Associate Professor of Africana Studies and History at our very own Stony Brook University here on Long Island. She is currently writing about and researching historical justice in a global framework. She too is a member of the Brookhaven Landfill Action and Remediation Group. Please join me as I welcome them both.
Hello.
Welcome. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. It is an honor to have both of you here with us tonight. I would like to begin with you, Monique. I've read in your bio that you are a lifelong resident of Long Island. I did not know that previously. So, can you share with us what that means and how that impacts your involvement in this work?
Yeah, so I am just want to make sure that my camera stays right.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know why it's being, I guess because it's opposite of what I'm thinking. So I've been on Long Island my whole entire life, and generationally, my family's been on Long Island for centuries. We are Settecott natives from the North Shore, so that's the Setauket area of Long Island, and that's in the town of Brookhaven, what we call now the town of Brookhaven.
Mhm.
But it was grabbed from our natives in the 1600s. So that's where I come from. My family lived there up until about the 60s. 1964, I believe my grandparents moved to, no, yes, actually 64. They were
Mhm.
married in 61,
Okay.
yeah, 64, to North Belport. So North Belport was like a working class community of at that time was white, mostly white people.
Okay.
But as the black and indigenous people moved into the neighborhood, there was you know, a white flight taking
Mhm.
place. So most of the white people moved out of that neighborhood as we moved in, and this is where my family flourished. My grandparents bought a house, and we've been there ever since 1964. I was born in 78, and this landfill came in 1974.
That's longer than my existence on this earth.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So there's been a landfill in Brookhaven since 1974.
Yes. So the activism against this landfill started before that time. There was a landfill in Islip prior to Brookhaven, and that landfill was full.
Mhm.
So they made plans to move and start a new one in the town of Brookhaven,
Mhm.
right in Yaphank, which is 4 miles from our community. And we fought against it from that time. So there's never been a time of record that we wanted this landfill here in the town of Brookhaven next to our community. The town hasn't listened to us since then. They've made minor um, appeasements along the way. But at this point, we're tired of being told that the landfill is going to close, that they're going to do what they need to do. We want them to actually, we want to hold their feet to the fire and just have them close it. So the
Absolutely.
plan is for them to close it in 2024, but we don't see any evidence of them closing it in 2024. So this is why we put this group together. We started in June. This specific group, like I said, activism against this landfill has been throughout.
Mhm.
But this specific group started in June of this year. We were out in the streets for the Black Lives Matter protest. We wanted to make sure that we not only dealt with what was going on nationally, but what was going on in our backyards. So this landfill is something that our town, like I said, never wanted. We are already suffering with asthma and different respiratory illnesses in the neighborhood, cancer and things like that. So and just the normal oppression that happens against Black folks with the health system, with the police, with the education system. So this landfill is on top exacerbating this situation. So we can't have that, and this is why we decided that we were going to form this group and really just stick to it until it got closed.
Yes. Dr. Abena, sorry, please jump in. How did you get involved? First of all, welcome. Welcome. I met you speaking on a panel with you with a local group, Building Bridges in Brookhaven. Shout out to that organization. I would be remiss if I did not mention the organization on whose shoulders definitely I stand in terms of activism here on a local level. And it is there that we met. So you have been an activist at least for as long as I've known you, and that's been a few years now. How did you get involved with this particular cause?
Well, I got involved with the Brookhaven landfill issue because of my connection with my sister here, who I'm on this show with today.
Yes.
We first connected around Black Lives Matter marches in about 2016 or so. That there was a time when back then there was an effort to kind of organize some marches in response to the Black Lives Matter movement. And then that's when we met. And right away, when you meet people and you understand that they are in your life for a reason, that was how I felt about her. And more specifically, this is a person who has such deep roots within Long Island and has a wealth of knowledge and information, both about the history, as she talked about her household and the fact that she is indigenous here, and her roots stretch back before settlers, before the British came into what we call Long Island. Her household was here. Okay, so that gives you a different sense of when you're new to an area, who do you get to know? Who do you learn from? What a pleasure to have the opportunity to connect with people who have such deep historical roots. But beyond that, a person who had a vision of what Long Island could be, right? And was out here trying to make the connections and work to make Long Island a place where we can all live and thrive together. Because when most people think about Long Island, we think of the history of white flight, about among the most segregated places within the USA. And yet what that narrative often overlooks is the fact that there are people here who are indigenous, Black, and from all around the world who are here making a life. So I was connected to her. And interestingly enough, in the past few years, my household also moved not too far away from the Brookhaven landfill. And so when I entered that town, the area around the landfill, immediately you begin to hear about the history of this landfill and the fact that it has been a troubled site for close to 15 years. And that's something which has to be said. This is a landfill in which the town of Brookhaven in this past year had to pay a $250,000 fine to the U.S. Department of Justice and the EPA because of the Clean Air Act. The landfill emissions, the gases that were being released into the air were in excess of what is allowed by the Clean Air Act. That is one data point that we can look at. We can look back into the 80s and see that there was actually a leachate plume. Toxic poisons seep into the groundwater. And as we know, once that occurs, this is a leachate plume which is still with us today in the area. It cannot just be fixed like that. So when we are thinking about the Brookhaven landfill and our efforts against it, as just been said, this is a movement which has been occurring for decades because it has always been the proximate areas which have been the ones raising the alarm. Something doesn't smell right. Something doesn't look right. And when we come to speak about North Bellport specifically, according to the CDC, the North Bellport area has the lowest life expectancy in all of Long Island. That single census tract has the lowest life expectancy in all of Long Island. This is right next door, adjacent to the Brookhaven landfill. And the community has been saying for decades that something is wrong here. And what we are asking is for the town of Brookhaven and also for New York State, the Department of Environmental Conservation to step up to the plate and put a value onto the lives of the people who are being disproportionately impacted by landfill. Because the evidence is there. We have the emissions, we have the leachate plumes, we have decades in which folks have been speaking about noxious smells in the area. And that when we talk about smells, I mean, among the things that is oftentimes overlooked is how this impacts people. What does it feel like as a child to wake up and leave your house and be hit with a smell that makes you feel sick on your way to school? There have been lawsuits about these smells and how they're linked to the landfill. This is a larger issue. And what we are asking for right now is for Brookhaven Town and New York State to be accountable.
Could I just jump in real quick?
Of course.
So, yeah, I just wanted to jump in because the point that we also are making is that this is not by accident. Landfills all over are placed next to areas such as North Bellport, Black, Indigenous, people of color, low income. We are being set up each time by state-sanctioned violence on our communities in all types of ways. But this is one way. 99% of all landfills are next to communities like North Bellport. So that point has to be made, and it has to be acknowledged by the town of Brookhaven and also nationally, that this is what you guys are doing, and it's by design that you are doing it. So we're not sitting back and just gonna take it. We're not just gonna allow you to say, "Oh, okay, we'll listen to you," and just go away. No, we're standing up for North Bellport, but we're standing up for all the other communities that are facing this issue. Yes. And we don't want this issue to arise again. So this is why this is our point, to keep it connected to Black Lives Matter and environmental justice, because if we just clean it up, and if it just is a point of health and it's a risk and it's toxic to a community, then they're going to miss the point. or they're going to think we missed the point. And that is where I can't have it. You know, I'm
Right.
not here to piecemeal Black Lives Matter for this issue, that issue, and the other issue. I am here to connect the dots and make sure that you know that we are connecting the dots and we're coming for you.
Okay. Just straight like that.
Straight like that.
That's it. This is not, we're not wondering. I've been typing in the chat if you see me, like, because I'm trying to engage our listeners, our viewers. As you're speaking, this is sounding like Flint, Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
This is sounding very reminiscent of Flint, Michigan. When I think about redlining districts on Long Island and Robert Moses and the way Long Island was constructed, it's all coming back to me. This is by design. If there's nothing else you walk away from thus far, that is a keynote. Take your notes. This is not a broadcast. This is a class right now. And when we talk about the sanctity of life, we can't breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
We can't breathe. This is a literal now.
This is a literal.
Can't breathe
Mm-hmm.
because this landfill is like a knee on our necks.
Mm-hmm.
A knee on our necks that's been on our necks for decades. You said 1974. So we thought 8 minutes and 46 seconds was long. That was outrageous, egregious. Now let's take 46 years.
Mm-hmm.
This is outrageous. Do any of your kids wake up and walk out of their home and smell a stench that is so repulsive they want to vomit?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not exaggerating this. And there are also very clear distinctions in Bellport. There's North Bellport. Not all of Bellport has this. Only the black section is suffering like this. I want to be very clear because there are people who don't know Long Island. They might say, oh, well, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? This is in a neighborhood, a community, a close-knit community, I might say. Monique can trace her roots all the way back. Her roots on Long Island are here from before Long Island was called Long Island in this foreign tongue. So there's that. And then there's the fact that there are families connected to these numbers.
Mm-hmm.
There are real lives connected. You mentioned asthma. You mentioned cancer. You mentioned low life expectancy.
Mm-hmm.
This is...
I was talking to someone yesterday about it. He used to actually work at the landfill, and you know he has asthma, all the same things, and basically he was like, I have asthma now, but I don't even know how this is impacting me down the road. Like I'm young, on the younger side right now, but when I get older, how is this going to impact my life? And that's the same for me. I do as much as I can to keep my health keep myself as healthy as I can.
Yeah.
But when you come down to thinking about things that will help your health, like gardening and things like that, I have to take into account that I can't really put something in the ground.
I was gonna say, can you garden?
Beds and stuff. I can't just throw something in the earth where I live. That also might be just as toxic. So, these are the things that, maybe in another community, they could just, plant food and have whatever they want and know that their soil is nutritious. But I don't know that is the case for my soil. And nobody's coming around checking.
Absolutely. And I mean, we've talked about the public health impacts. We've talked about the sort of emotional and psychological impacts. I think it is important in this culture to also note that there are economic impacts.
Okay.
When the town comes and puts a landfill right next to a specific area, then what do you think that does to the home prices in that area? Then what do you think that does to those people's ability to gain equity and gain wealth through their homes and sell them? Okay, how does that affect the options to kind of create thriving businesses in that area? How does that affect the options to have a vision of development in that area? All of these things are occurring within the shadow of this landfill. And that also has to be taken into account when we are thinking of the impact of this landfill holistically. Because this is one of the things I think that the town of Brookhaven has been particularly slow to do, because just as has been explained, they are unwilling to acknowledge the fact that this particular community, North Belport, is bearing a disproportionate burden for the waste of not only the town of Brookhaven,
Long Island.
waste of much of Long Island.
Yes.
When you understand what goes into the Brookhaven landfill as of this point, it is not only the waste from the town of Brookhaven. What you have is the waste residue, the ash, which is burned from about 4 different towns, which is burned at the
Cavanta, is it called? What is it? Right?
exactly the incinerator in Hempstead. Then all of that ash is sent back to the town of Brookhaven. And so when you think about it, almost the waste residue of 2 million people, about 600,000 households, is ending up right next to small North Belport.
And North Belport is comprised of how many people? So people who are, for all my numbers people out there,
Sure.
you have the waste of over 600,000 people being burdened by whom? By how many?
The waste of almost 2 million people, 600,000 households, being borne by North Belport, which is about 11,000 people.
Come on.
So that just has to be accounted for in all of these ways. What type of provisions do we make when we're thinking about disproportionate impact? And I use that term very specifically because there is a history around the environmental justice movement.
Okay.
And the environmental justice movement has been developed based on what we just broke down here so beautifully. The fact that within the USA, you have a history in which folks of color and poor folks have been disproportionately exposed to toxins, to hazards, to risk that comes from the growth machine. So this has been seen, as has been described, all over the country. This is something you see in Chester, in Pennsylvania, you see it in Texas, you see it with the oil plants, you see it all around the country. When some sort of growth infrastructure has to be developed, which is toxic, historically, it has been put next to those people who have been seen to have the least amount of power in the public sphere, because they will be the ones who will not, they thought, push back, they will take it. Because we live in a country which has a particular racialized history, there are groups which are targeted. There are groups whose lives have been historically not valued by our national laws as much as other groups. So the environmental justice movement has been an attempt to respond to this history. And part of the environmental justice framework is 2 pieces. The first is about disproportionate impact. Is one community being made to bear a disproportionate impact from infrastructure that is meant to benefit everybody.
Yes.
The second piece is fair involvement. And both of these things are significant when we talk about the Brookhaven landfill. And when we talk about fair involvement, it is the idea that the communities which are impacted should be able to participate in making the decisions about the waste infrastructure, about the policies, about the toxins that are impacting them. So when you look at the history of the Brookhaven landfill, I will speak from our own experience in this past 6 months. It has been very difficult to get information from the town of Brookhaven about what is. So how can you have fair involvement when there has been no public question and answer session with town decision makers about the future of the Asheville, the future of the landfill? We have been asking for a public Q&A so that the communities which are impacted, not just North Bellport, but all of Brookhaven.
Right.
Because when we're talking about water, when we're talking about air, we have disproportionate impact. But air and water don't stay within census tracts.
They don't know color. Air and water don't know. Exactly. They know human, and that's it.
Exactly. And it impacts all of our future. So we have people, our landfill action group has members from the North Shore to the South Shore. We have some people out east. Everybody is asking because we all have to be stewards, both of this land, which is not all of ours. We're here as stewards of somebody else's indigenous lands. And we also have to be stewards of each other. Hello. So if something is impacting somebody, how can we say we are anti-racist? We want all children to thrive within the town of Brookhaven. When you have so many children within North Bellport who are being disproportionately impacted in this way. This affects everybody. So we have people from all over speaking out, trying to engage the town on this question, the future of the Brookhaven landfill. We have not been able to get a public question and answer session with town decision makers. So when we talk about environmental injustice, this is why we use that term. There are two pieces of it: disproportionate impact and fair involvement. Both of those are an issue today in 2020 when we're thinking about the Brookhaven.
I just want to jump in again when you're talking about disproportionate impact. So one of the other things that's disproportionate is the response or lack of. So we've been working on this since June. I've been reaching out to the town. I have not gotten a response.
When you say reaching out, how are you reaching out? What are you doing?
By email.
Okay.
Asking for a response back, and I haven't gotten one. So, but there's other people that do get responses, and I don't believe that is by happen chance. You know, I've been, people have reached out to me from Newsday to other outlets because they know the involvement that I have in this issue. So I only can assume that the town knows the same information that these newspapers and all the other news media know that I'm involved. So when I am reaching out to you, there's no excuse for you not to know. So why aren't you reaching back? Why am I doing all the hard work? Why am I, reaching and asking and requesting, but there's no nothing on your end? So as our representatives or my representative, you have no no duty to me
Mm.
or to the community that I'm representing?
Where are the elected officials in the town of Brookhaven on this matter? Because Monique, you're raising a valid point that as you are a constituent, right, of an elected official who was elected to represent the needs of that demographic. Where are they?
Your guess is good as mine with that because they are not. They don't come to our neighborhood. Um, there's no engagement that I see
Mm,
unless it's respectability politics, and I'm not here for that. So,
no.
I can say that when I do reach out, I'm not reaching out in this, you know, quote unquote respectable kind of way. I'm giving it to you how I feel.
As you should. They work for you. Like, it's only right.
Yeah, well, I think that one of the things that we wrestle with here in the town of Brookhaven, and I'm so glad to have this chance to kind of break it down as much as we can. When you're talking about the landfill, we also should know that this is a big source of income for the town of Brookhaven. In the past year, about 30 million of net revenue was what the town of Brookhaven received from the Brookhaven landfill. Just because, as we described, the landfill accepts ash just from a range of different towns. There is a deal, an ash for trash deal, it's called, that the town of Brookhaven has made with the incinerator in Hempstead. So the town of Brookhaven's programs are funded because of the Brookhaven landfill. And this is one of the things that we are really looking to make plain. When you think of all of the sort of wonderful actions which are being taken by the town of Brookhaven, whether that is with attempts to seed oysters in the bays or with all sorts of green initiatives which are occurring, we are thankful to see this sort of environmentalism from the town of Brookhaven. But we should know that some of those dollars are coming because of the Brookhaven landfill, are coming on the backs of North Belport. So we are looking to have a discussion about how we can have our values be aligned in the town of Brookhaven with the town's actions. But when you start to talk about money, I brought this up here because it plays into the question about where are the elected officials. People become nervous when you want to talk about closing the Brookhaven landfill, because with gross cash from the Brookhaven landfill, the past 10 years, $500 million over the past 10 years has come into the town of Brookhaven because of the Brookhaven landfill. And one of the reasons I use the word accountability is because I believe that something could be done with that money. Create a waste infrastructure which is not environmentally unjust, which is not disproportionately impacting North Belport, which does place a value on the future and lives of all of Brookhaven town residents. But instead, what the town has been able to do is stick with the status quo, because this is one of the things why we have to understand history. If we are not willing to break with the status quo within the USA, we will be perpetuating racial injustice. We will be perpetuating unjust systems because those were set up back then in the 70s. So when we come to 2020, there needs to be a decision made by elected officials to make their spoken ethics align with their actions. And that means deciding to do the hard work of closing the Brookhaven landfill and investing in a just transition away from incineration and dumping and creating a waste infrastructure that is actually something that we can get behind. So I think that's why you don't hear from a lot of the elected officials on either side of the line before this issue, because there is a real a cash incentive here.
It's going to make their money funny.
Yep.
And just like the history of this country, the money of this country, the economic wealth in this country is made off the blood, sweat, tears, lives of Black, Indigenous people of color. There's no way around it. It's still going on. It is still going on. We need to open up our eyes, stop perpetuating racial injustice. Your ethics need to align with your actions. We're going out telling people to vote. Perhaps this is an issue you need to look at before you vote. What have their votes been? Look to see an elected official's record. What have their votes been on these issues? That is public knowledge. And we have constituents here saying that they've reached out to their elected officials and have gotten no response. Anyone listening to this, whether you know about this issue or not, you have to know something's wrong with that. You have to know something's wrong with that. We haven't gone through this movement in this country. We're still going through it, fighting about vote, vote, vote. Who are you voting for? And are they really upholding your best interest? Of that 30 million, this is a question for either of you. How much of that has been poured back into North Bellport?
See, I was going to go right back to that because
Come
that's
on.
the disproportionate things that we're talking about.
Mhm.
They're getting this revenue for the town,
Mhm.
but we're not seeing the effects. Our community is not clean. They're not coming to clean the streets. Our parks are not being catered to or modernized, or even where we can even have basketball nets on our basketball courts. You know what I'm saying? That we had to fight with them. I do have this I Dream sweatshirt on. This summer we were doing things with the kids where we were having what do you call it? Barbecues on Fridays. We had to shut the barbecue down because the lights wouldn't come on, and they wouldn't turn the lights on for us. But adjacent to where we're playing basketball and things like that, where the people are playing baseball, the lights are shining bright. So, it's just little covert things and what do you call them, microaggressions that is felt all the time. And that's one of them. But, there's no reason why, if, like you said, we're bearing the brunt on our backs, but we can't get these things in our neighborhoods. We have to call, not one person, two people, three people. The whole neighborhood has to go down there to get some change, And then how can we? We're working 2 and 3 jobs.
That's right.
Who has time to be on the neck of the government who's supposed to represent you? We don't have that kind of time, So, yes.
My thing is, they're not even acting like like they care. They're not even trying to play the role.
No.
When someone can play the role, like, okay, we're milking these people, we're using these people, we've been doing this for decades, but we're going to try to pull the wool over their eyes by building up their parks and the ways to make them say, well, even you might be duped, saying, well, it's not that bad, look where the money. They're not even trying to do that. It's like they have this on lock. There's but no, we're here to say to you tonight, it's getting unlocked. You're exposed, not just in Brookhaven, across the United States, across the globe. Any and everyone who sees this, I need you to help put a stop to this. If you claim to care about children, if you claim to be a part of a national parents union that fights for the rights of children, there's nothing to fight for if the children are dead because they can't breathe. Let's just put everything into the proper perspective here. We're talking about life, breathing, inhaling air that is so dirty and toxic that it literally causes the your lungs to start to close up and get black. We're not talking about people that smoked a pack of cigarettes every day of their life for the past 20 years. We're talking about innocent children and people who are just living day to day. We got to drive this home because people try to rationalize stuff and make things okay and pretty it up. There's nothing pretty about this. It's ugly through and through.
It's surely ugly, and you brought up the children, and that just brought me back to one of the key points that I like to always make when I'm talking about the Brookhaven landfill. The Brookhaven landfill came here in this town in 1974, but they also brought something else here after the fact, and that was a shelter. So Help Suffolk USA has a shelter in North Belport, and it houses families, large families. So that means that there are more children being affected by this than there are adults. Um, so this is family. I'm talking about friends. I'm talking about previous schoolmates that live in these shelters. It's not some person that came from the other side of Long Island and doesn't really know what's going on. I mean, there's some of that, but by and large, there's a good majority of people that are from the North Belfort area anyway. So they never include the people who live in that shelter in any of the statistics or any of the, the counts as far as demographics and things like that. So we never really get a good picture of who is in the neighborhood, who lives there, who's affected by the landfill. And the shelter was started, Help Suffolk USA was started by Andrew Cuomo. He started that as the national shelter system. So this is one of them that was placed here in the 90s. So family's been living in there since that time, generationally. So because there is also homelessness, and there's also generational homelessness that happens because of the systems and how we are perpetually kept into a box, basically a caste system where you can't get out of it. So once you find yourself in a homeless shelter, a lot of times it's hard to get out of it. And even if you find yourself getting out of it, then sometimes it repeats to the next generation. So this shelter is steps away from Frank P. Long School. And that was a place where advocacy work was done back in 2017 to have that school closed because there was teachers who've been sick and died of cancer, and they believed that this was a cancer cluster due to the Brookhaven landfill. And advocacy was to close the school down. At that time, I also wanted to point out the EJ issues as far as even if you do close the school down, the kids that go to that school still live in this neighborhood and they'll still be affected. So we have to push towards the landfill and make sure that the landfill is account for what's going on at the school, not so much the school being account for what's going on at the school. So so that's the whole area that we're talking about. We're talking about a school district that has been affected, a school, elementary school of fourth and fifth graders. and teachers that teach them. And then you're talking about a shelter that lives or that resides steps away from there. And so North Belport encompasses all of this. And so you can't just say that, just forget about the specifics that are going on inside of North Belport. You have to dig a little bit deeper. So why would they put a shelter next to a landfill?
Because those lives don't matter. That's why. Because you're not do. That's why. That's really what they're saying. You are the least of these. You are a member of society for which we could do with or without. Wouldn't make a difference either way. Because I can tell you I've never been there, but in full transparency, my children and I lived in shelters before. We've come a long way. But when you mention a shelter, if you're in a shelter, it's because things have already gotten to a point in your life where it seems insurmountable. You're in need of great help. You don't even have the basic needs of life being met. So now on top of that, to be dealing with the toxicity of a landfill at a time when you're trying to regain a semblance of self and humanity while taking care of your children and holding it all together, this is a violation of human rights. It's beyond. That's why I need our viewers out there to really tap into this. Brookhaven today, your town tomorrow. It is not an isolated incident. Okay? This is egregious. This is serious. We should all be outraged because it is a direct attack against human life. Black Lives Matter is not just about going out and marching. It must matter in every single way that life matters.
Exactly.
Not just stop shooting us or defund police. No, that's just we got to grow up to get to that point first. Are these babies going to grow up? What are the issues they're having? This is an adverse childhood experience that they are going through continually. It's a continual assault.
Yep. Compounded. And like you said, we're not only getting shot by the police, we are getting killed and shot by the pen because they are writing proposals, they are writing policies that affect our lives, and they don't want us in the room. They ignore our voices, and it has to come to a time where we just stand up and fight back, and we need everybody to do that.
We sure do. And this is a particularly urgent time in terms of the Brookhaven landfill, because as of now, one of the things that we were speaking about is that the town has been saying that the landfill would close in 2024. That's because after so many decades of expansion, that landfill is now 276 feet high. It is one of the highest points in all of Suffolk County. It is a mountain there. After so many years, the last cell that they built, cell 6, is now meant to fill up. And so we have discovered, the town has just announced this past August that they are exploring, digging, creating a new ash fill directly next to the old landfill site.
No.
Initiating a process that would ensure that the disproportionate impact is compounded for the next 50 or 100 years. This is the plan which is on the table right now in 2020. And we are asking a range of organizations and activists. We just today, actually, we launched a sign-on letter in which we are asking organizations and civic leaders and faith leaders throughout Long Island and throughout New York State to stand with us and say, we are advocating for the landfill to be closed and cleaned up and a just transition plan away from this cycle of incinerate and burn. What we are not here for is in 2020 to build a new ash fill directly next to the old landfill site and ensure that the injustice of the past 50 years continues for the next 50 or 100 years. This is the plan that the town of Brookhaven is currently exploring. So I would encourage everybody to please connect with us. We are on Facebook. We are on Instagram. Our Instagram handle is at Landfill Action. That's a great way to kind of connect with us. And we really need everybody to speak up about this issue because, yeah, the town believes they have it on lock because of the money incentive, because this has been allowed to continue for the past 50 years. But enough is enough. And I believe that anybody who can say Black Lives Matter has to be able to say Black Lives Matter more than some revenue. And let us use our resources, our intelligence, our planning acumen, and create a plan that is just and which can work. We have different places around the country, around the world, who have moved away from landfilling. And we believe we can do that here. So what we're asking is for our elected officials to do their job. Be creative, protect all of the constituents, and let's create a plan together with transparency, with fair involvement. We can do better in 2020 than we have. And what we're not going to do is continue and build a new ash fill so that we can continue to dump all of the waste, all of those ill effects on the same community that has already borne the brunt for the past 50 years.
I have your Instagram handle going across the bottom. Is there any other information that can be shared? I'm putting it in the comments so that we can share it. Get involved. So that's the Instagram handle. How else can people get involved?
Our Facebook page is called Brookhaven Landfill Action and Remediation Group. You can find us on Facebook there. We have an email, and that's landfill action, right? At Gmail.
It is landfill action 631 at gmail.com. So 631, most people know that is the area code here in this part of Suffolk County. So it's landfill action 631 at gmail.com. And that's a good way to get in touch with us.
Okay, that's in the chat as well. So we have the Facebook page. It's entitled, go and join it, the Facebook group, Brookhaven Landfill Action and Remediation Group. Go there now, join it now. It's free. It costs nothing to join. Go for it. Email Monique or Abena at landfill, one word, all one word, landfill action 631 at gmail.com. And to reiterate, on Instagram at landfill action. Get involved.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you. You're thanking me. I've done nothing. You are the warriors out there on the front lines, bringing this to, we need education. We suffer and we perish for lack of knowledge. And we suffer and we perish at times because we're tired. This is exhausting. Just hearing about it is exhausting. It's frustrating. The range of emotions I felt just in this past hour, learning more about this issue. I cannot even fathom living under these conditions. These are homeowners. This is a neighborhood. This is a community. These are lives, real people. This is a real issue, ladies and gentlemen. The Brookhaven landfill. Brookhaven, town of Brookhaven, shame on you. Shame on you. You should be doing better than this. And the time for change, it's now. You can right this wrong. Don't take it into another 5 decades. Don't you do that. Don't you do that. It's wrong. Tap into your conscience. Tap into your conscience. I remember Ruth Bader Ginsburg, rest in peace, as I watched her documentary, said the way she was able to break through with some of the men on other justices is by saying, well, don't you have a daughter? Things changed once it was their daughter. Once she was like, oh, it's not just what, well, this would impact your daughter. I'm going to say to you, town of Brookhaven, you might not be living in Bellport. Would you want to live like that? Because this is beyond a race issue. Let me tell you, there's something wrong. There's a cancer in the heart of humanity. There is a cancer that would allow this to go on while all around, they're very affluent. We haven't even touched on the neighborhoods that surround North Bellport. Oh, the stark difference in socioeconomic means. It's great. It's obvious. You feel comfortable seeing your neighbor living like that?
Mm-hmm. I have to say, this has been one of the blessings, along with the exhaustion and the work of this effort around the landfill, is because the piece that you just named about education is so significant. When people hear what is going on, you know it's wrong on its face. And this is why I believe the town of Brookhaven has been so reticent about informing people of the Asheville expansion plan. They don't have Q&As about it publicly anywhere in the town of Brookhaven. And because this plan and this approach is indefensible. So we are asking everybody to tap into that conscience, get involved. You can make a call. You can talk to your elected official. You can begin to educate the people around you about what happens after you bring your trash to the curb. Where does your trash go? Who does it impact? How are you connected to grave environmental injustice? And from that, you begin to know what you have to do to right this wrong.
And I just want to shout out everybody else who's out there. I know you said this is national. Anybody else who's out there who's fighting these fights, who's living next to a landfill or some type of power plant or some type of environmental injustice. Look, we don't need to fight these battles alone.
Right.
So we're here sharing our information, and our information I know is probably just as similar as to your situation. So we need to fight together and come to on a collective and figure out how we can stop this from happening again.
Monique, Abena, thank you so much for your time. I would like to invite you back again. I know there's some work that needs to be done by January 15th, I believe, is another cutoff date. So I would like to invite you back again before that time to provide more information, perhaps an update. Between now and then, I'm charging, you should see a flood in your Facebook group activity, in your emails. I'd like you to come back and report back to us. National Parents Union family, I am charging you, get involved. Policies need to change. Things need to change, and we can help, and we will help. We thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. That's it for tonight for this edition of the National Parents Union presents Speak Your Truth. Be well. With each breath you take, think about those who are not breathing so easily tonight. Have a good evening. Good night.